I just want to say when Terry Fox, whom I adore very much, asked me to be a part of this, I kind of wanted to strangle him through the phone when he said there would be hundreds of you. So here we go. What is fear? It's an emotion that has many different faces, but the common denominator is that we all deal with it. Tonight, instead of talking about my process and day-to-day studio life, I thought it would be important to talk about fear, the role that it's played in my life and career, and the importance of learning how to dissipate it. Here I am as a wee one, and clearly one thing I was not afraid of was food. Also, my mom's here tonight, so shout out to you for the healthy portions. I was surrounded by family fueled with creative energy, so there was always this common need for artistic expression. Not only did my mom perfect the art of producing chubby babies, she also worked hard as a single mom in graduate school. She later went on to travel to Central Vietnam to work with orphans, sex trafficking victims, and those living in leper villages. She is my inspiration, and she is someone who has taught me how to sit with fear until it becomes something else. I studied art at Huntington College and graduated in 2015 with a BFA. Growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, I never imagined I would go to college a mile from my parents' house. That makes me sound really lame. But I had the opportunity to play collegiate soccer. I had great art professors, and I had two even greater reasons to be home. My mom and stepdad came home one day to announce their decision to adopt. In 2012, they brought home Cecilia, and then 3 years later, Olivia, both adopted at birth. And you can ooh and ah, I'm not gonna judge you, it's fine. They changed my life, and because of our age gap, I felt more like their second mom than their sister. But I was soon met with fear and guilt. As exhilarating as Alabama life was, as I'm sure you can all imagine, it didn't quite feed my hunger. But being the asshole that it is, fear flashed its red horns at me and shouted, "Don't leave what's familiar." I sat with that asshole for a year, and then I realized leaving didn't need to be so scary. My sisters would walk their own paths whether I was there or not, and the thought of them not doing so made me feel profoundly sad. So I decided to invest in me and be confident that the value of that investment was greater than my fear of going. It was not abandonment, it was setting an example. I reached a place where my desire for change exceeded my fear of staying put. Last June, I sent my portfolio to Redux Contemporary Art Center, and although optimistic, told myself I would hear back in 2 years once the wait list had died down. I was called 2 days later with an open studio and ended up in Charleston a month later. I hunkered down into my 72 square foot closet, studio, for the first month because that's what you do when you live in a new town with no friends, right? I produced more paintings than I ever have in my life, work that was intentional and that I felt really proud of. And if you're not familiar, I'm an abstract expressionist painter. My work kind of derives from this constant exchange between my repressed state of mind and my conscious self, and I like to believe that I create these wordless narratives through my paintings. I'm really drawn to the vulnerability of this process because the point is to not think, but to feel and somehow display those emotions on canvas. And I guess what I want my work to do is to create some kind of ethereal world that beckons deeper observation and that evokes some kind of emotion or experience in you, the viewer. Soon, I began getting recognition for my work, and I had my first solo show at Mitchell Hill shortly after my arrival. A month later, I would find myself driving 13 hours to Chicago alone with 12 paintings stacked in my trunk. And what a ridiculous sight. Small town, 5-foot Sara, driving through downtown Chicago in a 4Runner the size of a trailer, receiving the bird from every other driver I passed. True story, I was met with a lot of aggression, but I scored an exhibition at Matthew Rockman Gallery, and for an Alabama girl, that was and still is a big deal. I became less fearful, and with that came opportunities. I got to paint for an event involving Andrew Zimmern of the show Bizarre Foods. If you don't know him, just keep this picture in your mind. You're welcome. His film crew approached me after the event about coming to film me in my studio. What? I spent the next day preparing, engulfed in my own world, and I would be lying if I said I didn't feel like hot shit for a second, until an hour before they arrived. I got a phone call that my studio and the work that was to be filmed had been vandalized exactly 1 hour before. Turns out that these vandals were 2 5-year-old neighborhood kids who had snuck through the back door of Redux. Anger melted as I saw my sister's face in theirs. My mom has always told me to show kindness when it's least expected. I walked up to their families, not wanting any compensation. If they're that interested in painting, I said, I would love to have them paint in my studio with me any day. I had no idea what their life was like. I just saw fear in their eyes, and I knew that feeling. I wanted to help them transform that into something positive. What came from this story was a secured grant for Redux from the Charleston Regional Alliance for the Arts, which would provide art opportunities and workshops for our neighborhood children. But the big question was, of all the days this could have happened, why that day? Looking back, it was a pivotal moment for me, and I came to realize that those kids were huge blessings. So, we all know what fear is in our own ways, but what if we did not have it? We wouldn't know the significance of taking a risk, what it looks like or even feels like. For me in my life, I've never taken a risk that I regretted. Granted, a lot of situations haven't worked out in my favor, but I've never not taken something of value from those moments. I hope no matter what stage you're at in your life or your career, that you learn to sit with your fears long enough that they're able to become something else. Moving here has been an incredible experience, and it's so refreshing to be able to live in the South, but to have found a city that has a community like this one, who has progressive ideas, who celebrates art and appreciates us. So thank you for the support, and thank you for listening to me.